I want to talk about the gap between ideas and action today, and how closing that gap is essentially a superpower now. There's this concept called Dopamine Talk. You might have heard about it, but it's when people have these grand ideas, grand designs for their life, what they want to achieve, what they want their life to look like. But then they don't actually take the actions needed to take them towards that life. They'll talk about it for hours. They'll come up with all sorts of ideas, the next new business plan, or how they're going to go about their career, their studies, whatever it is. But it doesn't actually translate to action. The fulfillment they're getting is from the discussion itself, from talking about it, from thinking about it. It's like you're speaking it into existence, but only for a short while, only for as long as you're thinking about it and talking about it. Once that moment goes away, you're left with nothing really. You're back to square zero. This is why you hear a lot of people say, do not discuss your plans, do not discuss your dreams, your ideas, because you can fall into this trap of dopamine talk where you just spend excessive time thinking and discussing things, but not actually taking the actions. So that's why it's really important to say what you mean and mean what you say. The people that you discuss these grand plans with, they will observe you afterwards and they'll see whether your actions line up with what you're talking about. And if they don't, then you've just proven that you're a talker, basically, that you talk the talk but don't walk the walk. So, as corny as it sounds, it really is worth just moving in silence, not talking about things at all, and just letting the results speak for themselves. Or unless you're absolutely sure that you are going to follow through on something, then you can discuss it. You don't want to be that guy, the guy who's always got these plans but doesn't actually follow through on them. Not that it matters what people think, but you will become that guy, and you're better off just staying silent if that's the case. Closing that gap between the ideas and the action is a superpower, and it really can start as small as you like. If you're someone who doesn't exercise, you could be the person who starts going to the gym. That's a big step for someone who doesn't do that, who has never done that. Or similarly, picking up a sport, new activity, new hobby. How you do anything is how you do everything. So it doesn't matter if it's a small thing. The rule still applies no matter how big or small the thing is. So if you're someone who says that you're going to start going to the gym and actually goes, you can also be the person that says they're going to write a book and then actually publishes a book, or says they're going to start a business and then actually starts a business. The same logic applies. It doesn't matter how big or small the thing actually is. Another common scenario that you can fall into this ideas trap, where you're an ideas guy but don't really take action on anything. It's when you're unsure of what you want to do with your life, what you want out of life. And for that, I'm going to paint a scenario. Imagine that you're holding a loaded gun and your target is in front of you, ducking and weaving, basically. Sorry to use a violent example, but it's probably the best one I can use. Think of the life you want. If you need to hit that target, are you telling me that the best way to get there is to just hold your finger on the trigger and do nothing? Just watch your target ducking and weaving around you. That's not how it works. You're going to empty the magazine. You're going to take some aim. You're going to take your aim, obviously. You're not just going to fire randomly. But you're going to take your aim and you're going to slowly unload that magazine. So that's the best way to go about things. When you're unsure of what you want, you have to just essentially take your loaded gun and start firing at things. And the shots that land will be the ones that tell you where you want to take your life and what you want out of life. But you'll never know unless you actually fire those shots. Instead, life will pass you by while you're just holding a loaded gun and not doing anything. Take your aim and start firing shots. The clarity will come with time, but you actually have to fire the shots to understand. So, in this analogy of the loaded gun and the life you want, what that translates to is basically trying things. Like, if you have ideas, you have to enact them, because then you'll know if it's right for you. You'll only know if something's right for you once you've tried it. You can't hypothesize everything. So you need to close that gap between ideas and action. And if you're not sure what you want to do with your life, you just have to try several things. And the clarity will come over time, because inevitably you'll try something, realize it's not for you, and then move on. But you need to keep going through that cycle, because if you just sit there holding the gun, not doing anything, your life will just pass you by. And I know this sounds really abstract and a bit wishy washy, but that's because none of our lives are the same. We all live different lives, but the principles are the same. So that's why you see a lot of this sort of discussion always in the abstract, because it needs to be universal, it needs to apply to everyone. And these analogies, they do apply to everyone. So I'll tell you about how I've applied this mindset to my own life. I remember last year when I was sat with a group of friends and I was telling them how I really wanted to write a book. And I was in a phase of my life where I was having new ideas every week. And I was speaking to this friend group every week. So then I'd naturally just discuss it with them. And I could tell that they had this mindset of, here we go again. Like, here's another idea. He's going to switch again. Another few months down the line, 6 months down the line, it's going to be something else. And he's going to forget about this idea entirely. Fast forward a year later, and I've got 2 books published. Now, they're not massive books. They read more like guides, actually. They're very short. But the reality is, they still needed writing, they still needed editing and then publishing, and they are now available for sale. So I did take the action in the end. It wasn't just talk. So that's one instance of how talk translated to action, and it took just under a year, so still quite a while. But then let's get on to starting this channel. The time it took between me discussing starting this channel for the first time and actually starting it was a month. A single month. You see how the time has cut down between those two things? And now I understand this is a new channel, like this isn't anything to write home about as yet. But that's not the point I'm making here. The point I'm making is one of idea to action. So if I can cut down the time taken from idea to action from a year to 1 month, that's progress. Like, that is literal progress. That's the sort of mindset that I'm trying to get across here. Close the gap between ideas and action, and your life will change. It's inevitable. You'll stop being that guy who just talks the talk, and start as small as you want. If you want to write a book, write a small book, write a short book, get it published. You've published a book at the end of the day, then you've done it. Now you can move on to the next thing. Maybe you can write a longer book, one that you can then look back on as your life's work. The quicker you close that gap between idea and action, the closer you move towards the life on your terms, the life that you want. So if you've watched this and you feel like you're that guy who engages in dopamine talk, has a lot of ideas but not much action to back it up, think twice about talking about it first of all. Again, as corny as it sounds, it's better to move in silence, let the results speak for themselves. And if you do happen to talk about it, make sure you actually follow through on it. Don't be that guy who just talks the talk. Close the gap between idea and action. Start small and big things will follow. Trust the process. You have to have faith in that. Have a good day, guys. See you in the next one.